Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Drake C. Toll locked on Big 12 with us today. Drake, we have much maligned the transfer portal and the current state that it's in. One ESPN insider thinks it's going away. Do you have a take here?
I do. Jay Billis says that per ESPN's Jay Billis, might I say, I'm going to add a little bit of I'm going to give him his full title here, says that the biggest piece of this House settlement, and anybody out there is going, House settlement, what rock have you been under? I know it's a lot to unpack, and on my show, your show, we could do 10 segments a week the next 10 weeks and probably hit new pieces of what this means for college athletics. But at the bare minimum, schools have athletes now signed to effective 1099 deals, that's tax-wise, that $20.5 million will go toward annually. So student athletes in football, basketball, and then some other sports will get money from the university, 75% football, and then 20% basketball. The other 5% will be dispersed amongst, or we're hearing in a lot of categories, 90 to 95% of that revenue with multiple schools will go football, basketball, and then sprinkle it out for everybody else. Jay Billis says he thinks that will keep the transfer portal at bay, because now student athletes will sign contracts that are multi-year with schools, and they'll sign multi-year contracts of NIL, and they'll now have some sort of loyalty. If there is anything we've learned in 2025 in college football, college basketball, college anything, there is no semblance of loyalty. The second you sign these multi-year deals, a student athlete can just leave, the same way that if I sign a multi-year deal with Locked On, I can one day say, hey, I don't want to work here anymore. Or they can say, hey, we don't want you in here anymore. And by the way, that would never happen. I love my job. You can't force someone. You can't handcuff someone to the desk. Will there be ramifications? That is possible. Could there be buyouts? Sure. But to openly outright say the transfer portal is gone, you're telling me a kid at Wake Forest, I would argue the transfer portal is now at its peak, because you're telling me a kid at Wake Forest that can't afford in a couple of years to do the full $25 million buy-in, which is what it'll become after inflation, that a kid who's not getting his fair share but playing really good football won't leave and go to Ohio State. You're telling me a kid at South Alabama who's a third-year starter, all conference, that can make $1 million more at Alabama up the road won't leave. This is only going to help the schools that can opt in entirety and hurt the schools that cannot. So if you're a small university, if you're in the MAC, if you're in the Mountain West, if you're in the AAC, you're done. If you can only pay $10 million, which a lot of AAC schools will, if you're a UNLV, you can only give $10 million, but even Texas Tech or BYU or Oklahoma State can give $20.5 million, your kids are going to still leave in the transfer portal. And TJ, again, if there's one thing we've learned, there's no such thing as a multi-year contract in college athletics. There has not been a single one that is held up yet. Arkansas made that big stink of, we're going to hire our lawyers and we'll figure this out in the court of law. No, you won't. It's all one big bluff. If we've learned anything, it's that the transfer portal is alive and well, and whatever the kids want to do, they're going to be able to do it. You can't handcuff them to the football field. I think this is complete idiocy from Jay Billis, who usually does a very good job covering college basketball. Stick to the basketball thing, good. The House settlement takes so far out of Billis, I don't think so.
Well, I kind of see where he's coming from, because, coaches never leave for better opportunities, and regular employees, if I had a job and, I may have said that I was going to work one place, but if a better opportunity came along, I'm loyal to keep less money and not do what's best for my family. So I kind of get where, if I know that Jay Billis, if Fox tripled his salary, I know he wouldn't leave ESPN. There would be no way that he would take 3 times the salary to go to Fox, whether you're going to buy out or not. I understand that his loyalty is just so much more than everyone else's. And so he expects now 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old I understand that people get upset when you call them kids, but non-fully brain function, developed humans. I understand that he expects these folks to be loyal, and I don't understand, Drake, why you would think anything different. I think that Billis is completely right, and the portal is now fixed for good. Here's the thing I think people are missing with the House settlement.
This is the one I want to interject here. If we spent the rest of this conversation and instead of calling it the portal, called it the workforce, would anyone bat an eye? Right? Yeah. Would anyone be complaining?
Now, I'll say this. I don't love the portal. Right. Florida State's gotten rich off of it. They've gotten poor off of it. They've had successes. They've had failures, whatever. It's been good. It's been bad. I don't love it in general, right? As a concept, I don't love it for loving the sport. But do I understand why it exists? And am I trying to limit any athletes that want to move around? Should there be guardrails? In my opinion, yes, probably. But all that aside, I understand why it exists, and I don't think anything's changing. I think the big thing people miss with the House settlement and the $20 million, it's really not changing much for, I'll say, most of the Power Four. And I don't really even know how much it changes beyond the Power Four. I think there are some instances where it does. But if you were Ohio State and your roster was $25-30 million last year, right? Whatever the number is, whatever the reported number is, the House settlement is not necessarily changing how much you're spending on an athletic program. It's just changing where some of that money is coming from. Maybe a little bit less is coming from the booster collective. Maybe it's changing how much you're spending in an increasing way. Maybe you say, hey, you guys are paying $25 million already. We got another $18 million we got to spend on football anyway. Let's add that together and pay more money. Maybe that's a way it's increasing. But if you were Wake Forest, and not to continue to dunk on them, and you could only afford $10 million for NIL for your entire athletic department anyway, you don't have to pay the whole $20 million. It's not a minimum like the NFL has where you got to pay X amount. And like you said, if you're Akron or if you're even like Boise State, a team that made the playoff last year, it's not just, so at the end of the day, it's not really changing much of the landscape. It hasn't just introduced a brand new way where this team that could never compete is now on Ohio State's or Texas Tech's or Florida's or Miami's level, Alabama's. It's not doing that at all. And so the idea that now the portal is going to go away, no, this is a rich get richer sport. Everything that happens in this sport is a rich get richer sport. Why? Because all that the people running the sport care about is money, right? And so it is always going to be a rich get richer sport. Does it give an opportunity for teams that haven't been super successful of recent to get in there and make some noise like Texas Tech? Absolutely, that opportunity is there. But Texas Tech is rich. Like, I'm not describing a team in the middle of nowhere that has no money. We're talking about the rich get richer. And so, yeah, things are not going to change. If you are at a Division II school or an FCS school or a non-Power 5 school, you are going to get a better opportunity if you go and ball out. That's just what's going to happen. And that's going to happen in the portal in a good way. And if you're at an Alabama or a Florida State or a Baylor or wherever and you don't cut it, you're going to get told to go somewhere else and explore other opportunities. This is not going to change anything. It blows my mind that Jay Bilas thought for 5 seconds that it would. Are buyouts and multi-year deals a good idea? Could they maybe curtail some of it? Yes. If you are at Wake Forest and you have a guy that has Heisman potential, any school in the country that's better than Wake Forest is going to pay his buyout because it is well worth the return on investment. We're paying $1 million for softball pitchers in a sport that loses money, that does not make any money anywhere except for maybe Oklahoma. Yeah. People are going to pay your buyouts, and they will gladly do it for the return on investment that they're getting. So, Jay, I don't know, man. Try something else.
Yeah, agreed. And I'll leave it with this. The Big 12 benefits from this, too, when the best player at Western Kentucky finds himself on the roster at Oklahoma State next season. We don't complain about it then, do we? We don't complain about it then.